Hi, everyone. It is noon, at least Eastern time on Friday, and I'm going to get started on time because I only have an hour, and I know this is probably lunchtime for a lot of people, it could be morning. So I'm trying to get in as much as we can in the hour. Thanks for coming. My name is Debbie Schwartz. I'm the founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 Facebook group and some other tools, which I'm going to show you about today. So before we get started, I'd love to know who's here. If anybody can share in the chat where you're Zooming from, what year in high school your student is in, and how much, like, kind of where you are in the process of searching for college. And have you started trying to find colleges that can offer your student merit scholarships? So please share any of that information in the chat. I'll just do some housekeeping while people are sharing that. This is technically a meeting. I personally like running meetings as opposed to webinars because I can see, at least I can see people who are out there. If you want to put your video on, thank you. Somebody just did. It's nice to just see people's faces. It's a little bit more personal in this world of that is becoming more impersonal these days. And this is, oh, thank you for everybody putting on your videos. And you can see each other now too, so it's not just me. And this is recorded. We send out a link the next day. Actually, today's Friday. We might try and be able to get it out by the end of the day, but if not, it will probably go out tomorrow. And if you can't find the email for some reason, we also put these on our YouTube channel. So you can see the most recent version of this. To tell you the truth, I do this webinar or variation of it like twice a month. So you can look at past ones. You can see other topics that we have there as well. So just a resource if you can't find the particular email, that we might have sent with the link. Okay, so let's see who is here. Lots of people with juniors, which makes complete sense. Oh, one last thing about how that it's run as a meeting. If you really want, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself and talk and ask a question, which is also kind of nice and fun, as opposed to just sharing your information in chat. But you should also, feel free to ask questions in chat. I will kind of look over to see what people are asking as much as I can. And then other people might respond and give you some information as well. Okay. So somebody from New Jersey with a sophomore, which is great, trying to do as much research as I can to plan college visits. Perfect. A ninth grader, a lot of juniors, current sophomore. Okay. People from all over, Maryland, Chicago, Florida. Okay, well, really good mix, and I am going to get started. I'm going to share my slides and talk you through what I can teach you, and that's really what I'm trying to do today is teach you the process, teach you about data, and kind of arm you with the resources that you can now apply to your family situation, your student situation, and do more personal research. Okay, let me get to my screen. Oops. I just. Okay. I don't think I shared the right thing. Let me hold on. I'm so sorry. I don't know why today my Zoom is being funky. Okay, can someone tell me what they're seeing?
Yes, I'm seeing a voicemail email from
Okay. Oh, got it. Yes. Sorry, wrong. Oh, That's from Terminex. That's okay. Got it. I see. I have, sorry, I have 3 screens and they were going to the wrong one. Okay. Much better. Okay. Got you now. Let me move this over. Okay. We should be good, right? Somebody, this is, we're now seeing the still
Voicemail.
no?
Voicemail.
Okay. Well, sorry. Hold on. Is this sharing the slides?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Let me just get the chat up. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so today we're going to talk about merit scholarships. I'm going to also talk about, let's just go to the next page, a little bit about SAI. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that yet. It's called Student Aid Index, and that you need to know that information as part of searching for merit scholarships. I'm going to talk to you about the importance of your family's college budget, again, as part of this process. Share some tips, and then I'll share a tool that we created that can help make this process a lot simpler. So why do we focus on merit scholarships so much? It's all tied into paying for college. And if I'll just give you 2 minutes about my background. I got into this space because for many years I worked in financial services, really on personal finance products. I worked for companies like Fidelity Investments and Vanguard and Chase credit cards. So I worked in mutual funds, brokerage accounts, credit cards. And then actually a former boss of mine asked me to go help him work with student lenders. And I was just, and this was now honestly probably close to 10 years ago. And I was shocked as to how little people understood about student loans and then just the whole paying for college process. I had, here I had worked with helping people invest their money, to kind of to pay for life events. And here is this major life event, right, that your student is going off to college, and it impacts 2 generations. It impacts your student and it impacts parents, depending on how well they've either planned for it or how well this admissions process goes, because you have to help your student pay for college, or ultimately you have to help your student borrow for college. So anyhow, that's how I got into this space. And it was really focused on first student loans and then working backwards, and realized like that to really help people with student loans, I wanted to help them understand how much college costs and how they could impact what the college costs for themselves. So anyhow, that's just the background about why I share this slide, because really there's only 3 major buckets that people have to pay for college. Obviously, one is coming from your savings, and then potentially maybe some money that you can manage from your own, cash flow of reducing your costs when your student is actually ready to go to college. And potentially maybe you have relatives that are like grandparents that are willing to pay. So that's kind of one bucket. The next bucket is free money, and that's what we talk about today. So of course you want to maximize how much free money you can get. And there's really kind of limited places, but they're important. One is financial aid, and that's going to be based on your family's needs, and we'll talk about that. One is, the next is merit scholarships, which is a big part of what we're going to talk about today. Then there's private scholarships and government grants. Government grants are really, and we also can see what's going on there. That's probably going to continue to be reduced and cut, but that's really for lower income families. Private scholarships, I am not opposed to, but I'll tell you my 2 cents. It is, I like to kind of spend my energy where I'm going to get the best return, right? So you can get money from private scholarships. It just takes a lot more work. And so in terms of like, if I'm going to allocate my time and effort, I want to work on the thing that's going to give me the best return. And that's really understanding what colleges your student applies to, whether or not you're going to be eligible for financial aid, and what colleges can offer your student merit scholarships. The largest scholarship that your student is likely to get is going to be from the college that they apply and enroll to. So private scholarships are great, but it's just more work. And also they are usually one-time scholarships. So if your student gets it for freshman year, that's good and helpful, but then they've got to find the same money for sophomore year, junior year, senior year. So again, I would just kind of hold off. Well, you can continue. Somebody, if a student or a family wants to search for private scholarships, they can and should, but just realize, to me, that's kind of like the icing on the cake. It's nice to have, but the real chunk of good money comes from financial aid and merit scholarships. Yeah, so somebody's asking private scholarships as defined from foundations and organizations. Correct. So these are organizations, and could be nonprofits, could be your local bank, could be a lot of some reason law firms and dentists offer scholarships. So this is money that is not coming from the college that your students going to potentially enroll in. And then finally, this is kind of where I started in this industry, is if you don't have enough money from what you can save, if you don't get enough money from free sources, then you have a gap, and you have to decide how to finance that gap. And that gap is either going to come from federal loans, which are directly for students and potentially parents. But I got to tell you that the parent loan from the federal government is called the Parent Plus loan. And it hasn't happened this year yet, but it is on the chopping block for all of the changes that are happening. And so I am telling families with students graduating now that if you're going to rely on that Parent Plus loan, don't. Meaning you can use it for this year, but it may not be there in sophomore, through senior year. So you always, in this process, unfortunately, you need to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, maybe even a plan D, because so much is changing. And then there are private loans. We do a lot with private lenders to help educate families about private loans. I came from the finance world. I'm not saying that they've gotten a bad rap. This is the way I look at private lenders. They actually serve a purpose, in that the government, previously, the way Parent Plus loans work is it's a fixed interest rate, and that fixed interest rate is usually on the high side, because they aren't really checking people's credit scores, so they're covering. They have to cover for bad credit. So that credit score is usually higher than if somebody with a good credit score went to a private lender and tried to get a loan. So that's the purpose, and that was the role that private lenders were playing. They are an option for people with better credit scores to get better rates. So again, I put that out there now for the people on here who might even if you have a junior, as part of your plan B, C, and D, start looking at your credit score now and see if you can improve it as much as possible, in case you need to go borrow. And obviously helping people understand their credit score and improving it is a whole nother session, but just that it does could be 8 to 14 months to really see a good improvement in a credit score. So that's why you need to start early in doing that. Okay, so somebody's asking, and I'm not going to spend that much time about financing, but somebody's asking about what about borrowing against a home equity? That is absolutely a possibility. Again, I don't poo-poo it. I like to look at all the possibilities. You have to see, obviously, how much equity you have in your home, what the rate is, and then you've got to feel comfortable about your employment, because I would hate to see that somebody borrows against their home and they lose a job, and then they can't continue paying off the refinancing or the HELOC that they might have taken out. So it's a very personal decision, but depending on your situation, it's something to put in the mix when you're figuring out, where you want to finance from. Okay, so let me just say one last thing about loans, is that we do have sessions coming up. They usually start in May through August. They are geared towards the seniors, so they're geared towards families with a student that's graduating now, but it's really helpful for families like yourself with a younger student to come and understand that phase of the process, because it might impact how you handle the search process. So be open to coming to those webinars, even if you're not going to need to use the information like today, it could potentially impact your decisions. Okay. So why do we focus so much also on the college search process? Because the college list, to me, is the most pivotal part of this process. It can kind of really make or break the outcomes. The college list drives so much of what's going to happen. It's going to determine your family's final cost of college, right? The colleges on your students' list and how much they cost are the options that you and your student are going to have to choose from, based on the results of whether or not they get accepted. So, if you don't have colleges on that list that you can afford, well, something magical isn't going to happen between when they apply and when they get the results. So you want to understand all the finances about the colleges on your students' list and the colleges that your student applies to. And we're going to show you how you can estimate. Nothing is guaranteed. You can estimate what your net cost is going to be at the colleges. And I admit it's not a straightforward process. It's not like buying a car where they have the sticker on the side and they kind of tell you everything up front about what the retail price of a car is, and then kind of what your net cost is. This is the work you have to do, but it can be done. You can estimate. You can kind of, I always say it's probably within a $5,000 range, but a lot of people kind of get there, and when they get the results, then they're not so surprised about what the costs are and what potentially the scholarships are that the students are going to receive. And then the last comment is something people don't always think about, but it is a lot of work to apply to college. I'm talking about for your students, so they're going to have to do essays, and I think we don't realize how many essays that there are. Of course, this is something called the Common App, and that was supposed to reduce the number of essays. There is one common essay that all the colleges look at if they're on the Common App, but over the years, the system has broken down, and so colleges have their own supplemental essays, and a student that could be applying to 10 or 12 colleges, and we'll talk about the number of colleges that they should apply to, could end up, having to write between, 10 and 20 of the additional essays. So that kind of takes time and energy. And then in addition, if they're applying to merit scholarships, the applications for some merit scholarships also have essays. So that's kind of where it might pile up. Okay, so quickly, merit scholarship is technically, in some cases a true scholarship. In other cases, colleges sometimes use it just really almost as a form of a discount. So they're putting out a sticker price of, making up numbers now, of maybe 60 or 70,000. But then when you look at the data, and I'll talk to you about what that data is, you might see that, hey, that particular college has a sticker price of 70,000, but they are giving everybody some form of merit scholarship. So everybody is getting, a $15,000 discount or a merit scholarship. So, so that retail price or that sticker price is really not what they put out there. It's because everybody's getting a discount. This is just the game to some extent that colleges are playing. Some truly use the merit scholarships to reward students with certain skills, academics, talents, and other colleges are using it as a discount to put a certain sticker price out there and then kind of charge everybody a different price who actually applies. But merit scholarship is not based on your family's income or the information that is provided through FAFSA. So that's why it's so important to understand if your family is going to potentially might be eligible for need-based aid, because that might be a source of money that your student can get in addition to merit scholarships. But if they're not going to be eligible for need-based aid, which unfortunately a lot of families, particularly middle income and upper income families, are not going to be eligible for need-based aid, then the only way to reduce this cost of college is by finding the college that can offer your student merit scholarships. That's why it's so important for families to understand merit scholarships and how you find them. The other thing, in comparison to private scholarships, which I talked about earlier a little bit, is that merit scholarships are renewable. And that's why it's so important to also research this and understand it as part of the admissions process, because colleges award a merit scholarship. And when they do, they're saying, we're going to give you this scholarship to the student for all 4 years that they're at college. There are some merit scholarships for transfer students, but the pool of money is smaller. The bigger pool of money for merit scholarships is for incoming freshmen. So again, that's why it's so important to do it as part of the application and admissions process. And so one other thing is that there is usually a minimum GPA that's required. Again, that's something we talk about kind of next year when students get their scholarship offers. You want to make sure that your student can handle the minimum GPA. Again, this varies. It could be really low and kind of easy. At some schools, it could be a 3.0. At other schools, it could be a 3.5, and they're kind of using it to weed out the students who are really going to pay attention to what that requirement is and who are really going to perform at the school. So again, it's hard, we don't always know that in advance, but that's the details that are going to be important to look at once your student gets their scholarship information. Okay. Oh, and then the one important thing, which I'm going to show you more data on, is that merit scholarships for the colleges that are using it to kind of reward and attract better students, it is for the student that is probably at the higher end academically of what that school normally accepts. So that's why it's important to look at what we call the 75th percentile in terms of SATs and GPA. That's a student that's at the top end of the students that normally enroll at that college. And so a college, to kind of improve their reputation, improve their rankings, they're always trying to attract a stronger student because it lifts up all of their stats. So that's where they're going to want to give money to that student who maybe might have been slightly reluctant to come to the college because they thought they can get into a more elite school, which could be the case, but the more elite schools don't give merit scholarships. So it is a little bit about supply and demand. Elite schools, have a lot of demand. They have limited supply. They don't need to use any tools to attract stronger students. They're already getting the best students. So kind of like a tier down, and these are still good schools, but maybe they don't have the brand reputation of the top schools. Then they're still providing good educations. They're using their money to say, hey, think of us more seriously. You're a good student. We want you here as well. And we're going to even use a merit scholarship to entice you to attend. Okay. We've kind of made these categorizations. These aren't any, official labels, but this is just an easy way to explain and understand the types of merit scholarships that are out there. There are merit scholarships that are automatic, meaning that all your student has to do is apply. Obviously, you want to research in advance to know that the college offers these scholarships. Usually the colleges that offer automatic merit scholarships have this information on their website. They have charts, they have grids, which I'm going to show you. And they will list and say, if your student has a GPA of 3.8 to 4.0, we're willing to give them this dollar amount in a scholarship. So we like those colleges a lot because they make this process easier. They're being more transparent, and your student doesn't have to actually do any other additional work. They just have to send in their application, and that college is saying, we're going to look at every student's application and see if they fit our criteria for receiving a scholarship. That's great. Those are also easier to estimate in advance if your student is going to fall into one of their category ranges, and then you can have a better idea of what merit scholarship their student's going to get, so you can estimate what the net cost is. The other grouping of scholarships is we call competitive. So the difference there is that students usually have to take additional steps. They usually have to apply for these scholarships. There could be an actual separate application. There could be an additional essay. Again, it's important to research and look through the website of colleges to see all these details. Some colleges make it easy to find, some colleges hide it. Always, your student can ask, email the admissions office, or if they are in contact with an admissions rep for your area, or if somebody has come to your student's high school from that college. These are great questions to be asking the admissions officers, about, I just want to make sure I understand, do you guys offer merit scholarships? You can even, your student can ask, are they automatic? Do I have to do anything additional to be considered for merit scholarship? And if I do, where is that information? Do I have to send in an application? Is there additional essay? This is the pre-work that, which, you could do, but this is actually great pre-work for your student to do, because, you can kind of guide them and say, find out this information, and then we'll collect it, put it on a spreadsheet, and then we'll know what you're going to have to do when it comes time over the summer to start applying. And then the last category is for students that have a special talent. This is not related to athletics. These are non-athletic talents. So it could be theater, it could be art, it could be music, and a lot of schools, conservatories will give additional money for students who are applying with these talents, and actually even non-music oriented, or or schools that don't necessarily, that's not their specialty, they might still have special scholarships for talents like this. What's important to know is that a lot of these types of merit scholarships, the student, again, has to fill out a separate application. They might have to send in a portfolio. They might have to actually schedule an audition. So that's why at the bottom of this slide, it is kind of in bold, and it says, keep track of deadlines, because all three of these types of categories of merit scholarships have potentially deadlines, particularly the competitive scholarships and anything that has an audition or portfolio or something that you need to send in. It's going to have a deadline, and that deadline could possibly, very possibly, be different than the deadline of the regular application. So again, that's why it's important to collect this information. A good project for your student to say, okay, find out all the deadlines for all the schools that you are interested in. And one other deadline I'll throw out here, which isn't listed here, is the deadline for financial aid forms. That is, again, could be different than the deadline for the application. So this is, I think personally, I have 3 kids. One's in college, 2 have graduated. This was a great learning experience on how to manage a kind of a complex process, which, in work, they'll have complex processes. In life, they'll have complex processes. So this is just a training ground of helping them pull together the information they need, and keep track of things and make sure they're hitting their deadlines. How great is it, as you as a parent, you can help guide them along the way. So that's just my personal opinion about how to approach it. Okay, so let me show you some examples. This is an example of what I would call the automatic merit scholarship. The most famous college, that maybe you've heard a lot about, is University of Alabama. They've been providing, very generous merit scholarships to in-state, but really to out-of-state students for probably 15 years now. And they have a very clear grid on their website. So, I just kind of throw that out there because that's been written up a lot, and a lot of people talk about that school. Here's another, happens to be a state school, Miami University of Ohio. And they also similarly
Can you take a screenshot of this?
Oops,
Oh,
sorry.
I lost it.
Okay. So these are grids that I've been kind of keeping track of since 2020. And I show you here just to see that things do change from year to year. You can see the bottom right is from 2020, right before the pandemic. So colleges, there were at that point very few, maybe like 10% of colleges were test optional and the majority were test required. So at that point, colleges would list as a requirement both the test score and the GPA. And as you can see, we moved to 2021 and then I skipped just for space purposes 2024, and then this is the most recent 2025. Miami University just stuck to GPA because a lot of students, and because they went test optional and students weren't always sharing their test scores. And they also, shifted even from 2021 to 2024 their GPA requirements. So you can see that in 2021, it was 3.95, and then it went up to 4.3. And they also kind of shifted their dollar amounts. They seem to have stabilized a little bit from, my personal opinion is from 2020 with the, going test optional and then figuring out how to rely only on GPA. They, were learning what worked and what didn't work. And then they are become a little bit more stable between 2024 and 2025. But, this grid will probably come out potentially sometime over the summer for students, who are juniors now that you can see, but you can still use the past information to start to hone in on these types of colleges. The other thing I just want to point out is Miami University happens to use a weighted GPA. This is a little unusual. A lot of more colleges use an unweighted GPA. So this is, again, another detail to make sure that you're looking out for. What type of GPA is the college using when they're looking at my students' application and then determining if they're going to be eligible for a merit scholarship? You can see on the left here, I copied, this is from Miami University's website, that they also recalculate the student's GPA. I say this because I actually honestly had a situation where a student was using her weighted GPA to kind of see what range she was going to fall into. But it turned out that the college was using her unweighted GPA. And so she thought she was going to get a higher dollar amount than what she actually was offered because she was using the a different GPA than what the college was actually going to use. So again, the details matter. Pay attention to what's on the college's website, but also ask the admissions rep. Again, you can kind of almost see a list of questions that you're building up that your student can easily ask to gather this information. So somebody's asking, so if your kid goes to a school with a high rigor, look for schools using weighted GPA if GPA is a question for your student. I mean, potentially. I mean, I would think that, so the other kind of caveat Suzanne is kind of asking about is that colleges also get what's called the school profile. So I don't know if anybody wants to say whether or not they know what the school profile is. If you don't, ask for your school's school profile. It's basically, like a summary of what your school is, kind of from like how many students they are, how many students or how many seniors there are, how where the types of colleges that the students might have gone to, the test score range that students at that school achieve, if the school offers APs. It's a quick summary for an admissions officer to see kind of what that school's all about. Okay, so colleges are looking at your student's GPA, but they're also looking at it relative to the school profile, and kind of they understand your student's GPA and how that compares to your student's school and then other schools if they have that profile information. So that's one thing to consider. But honestly, for these state schools, you're kind of right. The state schools have these automatic merit scholarships. They're going to take the GPA however they want to take the GPA, meaning they're going to take the unweighted or they're going to take the weighted, and you don't really have as much say about how they're going to interpret it if they have these automatic programs. So again, this is stuff that you need to research and know in advance. Then you'll have a better idea of what GPA they're using it and how they're going to use it. Oh, so I'm talking about the high school's school profile. Every high school has a school profile. High schools should have that on their website. If they don't, ask your student's guidance department or guidance counselor, college counselor. They definitely should be able to give you a copy of it. Okay, moving on. Here's an example of a competitive merit scholarship. And the reason why I want to bring this up because it goes to deadlines. So on the left is the merit scholarship from University of Southern California, USC. I know there's another college that uses USC, but this is from University of Southern California. So for a long time, actually, USC only had a deadline. They actually only had one application deadline, and that was December 1st. They didn't do early decision, or they didn't do early action. But they also, even when they only had one application deadline, they always had their merit scholarship deadline earlier than their regular deadline. So if you wanted to apply for merit scholarships, you had to apply November 1st, even though their deadline for applications was December 1st. They are kind of still like this, except the only thing else that they've changed is that they've also added early action. So now the early action has a November 1st deadline. And if you want to be considered for merit scholarships, and not everybody's automatically considered for merit scholarships, but if you want to be considered for merit scholarships, you have to apply, in this case, early action, and you have to apply November 1st. So this is an example of what's really important to know the deadlines, because if your student didn't know this and they applied, December 1st, their application would be reviewed. They'd get a decision about whether or not they'd be accepted, but they would not be considered for merit scholarships. So that's why it's important to know all of these details, kind of starting, now, so you can plan with your student over the summer to work on essays, and you're probably going to want to kind of put in some order of priority of what colleges you want to focus on, depending on what deadlines that they might be applying for. Okay, and then the other example on the right happens to be from Boston University. Again, they have a December 1st deadline for merit scholarships. And I just also share this example because although they're test optional, let me also give the caveat that some colleges, although they are test optional, may require test scores to apply for their merit scholarships. So again, that's another piece of detail that you want to find out about ahead of time. BU, in this example of their merit scholarships, they're saying they are test optional, but they're kind of giving you, and even their merit scholarships are given out to students who don't submit test scores, but they're giving you a sense of the quality of the student that most likely get these merit scholarships. So students usually might have a 1500 or an ACC of 33. Of course, this is very high achieving, but I'm just showing you the example of where you can kind of find these pieces of information on a college's website. Okay. So now I'm going to switch a little bit to the section of teaching you about SAI, Student Aid Index, and understanding your college's budget, your family's budget for college, and why this is important in the merit scholarship search. So for people who may or may not be familiar with this terminology yet, I call this Know Your Numbers. I'll just kind of quickly go through what these acronyms stand for. COA is cost of attendance. That's kind of the sticker price of what a college is going to potentially might charge. It includes, very quickly, tuition, room and board, and other types of fees that they are allowed to include in this cost number, like could be health insurance, it could be an estimate for travel expenses, just everyday living supplies, it could be a cost for some sort of I don't want to even say books these days because they're not using books, but a cost for an online book or things related to actual studies. So that number, just kind of relating to loans, is also important because the cost of attendance is the maximum that you can borrow. You can't borrow more money than the cost of attendance. So that's also why that number is important. SAI is the Student Aid Index. It used to be called something called EFC, Estimated Family Contribution, but with the whole change in the FAFSA system, which happened now, this is our second year, they changed the terminology to Student Aid Index. And this is the number that is calculated when you estimate or you fill out your FAFSA. And it is the number that colleges are using to determine whether or not your family and your student is eligible for need-based aid. Everybody right now, I have to admit, I haven't gone to check with everything that's happening in the government, but it should be still up and running. There is basically something called a FAFSA estimator. If you basically Google that, FAFSA estimator, it should bring you to the tool that's on the government site that can help estimate, what your FAFSA, what your SAI might be. So do that, because it will also gives you a sense of kind of where you fall. They changed the terminology to something called an index, to just because what was happening is that estimated family contribution was not what families were actually were paying for college. That's a different story. But this index kind of says that if my number is, I'm making up 30,000 and your number is 25,000, what that is saying is that I have more resources to pay for college. I'm less needy for additional money, and you might be more needy because you're lower down on the index. So it's just kind of like trying to put us all in some like form to kind of say who needs more money than somebody else. Okay, then what colleges and we can do is you take the cost of attendance and you subtract what the student aid index is, and that difference is what your family's need is. And that's the number that the college is going to look at to say, first of all, do you need money? And second of all, how much money do you need? And then the college will decide, can I help that family or not? And how much can I give towards that need? And then regardless of all these other numbers is your own family's number. So what can you as a family afford to spend to pay for college? And that is a number you should come up really before you start this process. And nobody is putting judgment. Nobody even needs to know other than your family. But you should factor that in, because the college is going to have their, cost. The government's going to say, you're needy or not needy. The college is going to say, I can offer you this much money. But at the end of the day, you've got to decide how much can we spend as a family. And then if that isn't enough, am I willing to borrow? And how much am I willing to borrow? And I just think that these are really important discussions to be had before the process starts instead of after the process. It's kind of like, parenting. Like, you don't show your kid the candy and then say you can't have it until you eat the the dinner, right? Because they just want to go for the candy or the dessert. So it's kind of similar here. If you wait to have these discussions after you've gone to college visits, and maybe you're visiting a college that you'll never be able to afford, or after your student has gotten into a college and then you have to say, wow, we're so happy you got in, but we can't afford it. It just is, just a harder conversation to have, and you're just kind of setting up disappointment that you could potentially avoid. Okay, so here is a great table that a partner of ours, a company called Juno, put together, and it's an estimate, I can emphasize that, of what your potential SAI might be, and if you might be eligible for aid. So it takes the family, because these are the pieces of the calculation that are in the FAFSA. The two biggest pieces are the parents' income and the parents' non-retirement assets. These are just for the FAFSA. So, again, just for estimation purposes, this is like a higher estimate. I would still go to and use the government tool that I mentioned. But you can kind of see that if you have an income really like around 300,000, and depending what your assets are, you start to edge out of being possibly getting any need-based aid. This is just it's like showing you where the split happens in terms of some families, they're never going to get need-based aid, and you need to know that now. So the only way that you're going to get money is to apply to colleges that offer merit scholarships. This gives you a quick way of kind of seeing where you stand. Okay, so let me use some more examples to explain how these numbers work. So on the example on the left, I'm giving you, assuming that this family has a SAI of 30,000. Okay, so they did their numbers, they estimated it with the FAFSA, and they are looking at a college that has a cost of attendance of 50,000, and they're also looking at a college that has a cost of attendance of 80,000. So the college is going to say, okay, does this family have a financial need? Well, this family does, because their SAI is less than the college's cost of attendance. But you can see that their financial need varies, because their SAI stays the same, but depending on the cost of the college, how much you need is going to vary. In the first case, their need is 20,000. In the second case, their need is 50,000. Okay, so that's one part of the puzzle. Then the second question that you would then ask, in terms of the research is, do each of these colleges, are they willing to help cover the need? And this is called, it's a data point called percent need met. And this is information that colleges share. They share it as part of something called the common data set. And that's actually, we do a whole nother presentation on understanding the common data set. But so what if this college, the $50,000 college, says, we're going to cover your need and we're going to cover it 100%. Well, that's great. So then that family is probably going to have to figure out, how do I pay the 30,000, but this college is willing to cover 100% of my students' need. They're willing to cover the 20,000. College, the $80,000 college says, we are willing to cover some of your need, and we're only willing to cover 50% of your need. So now that family might be getting, 25,000 in need, and then they're going to have to figure out, how can we pay for not just the 30,000, but now the 30,000 plus the 25,000 that the college is not going to cover. So this is, you can estimate this before your student even applies. So you'll know what the cost of attendance is. You'll have an estimate for what your family's SAI is. You can know whether or not you potentially have need. And then you go and you see, what percentage of need does that college cover? And now all of a sudden you have an idea, of what your net cost will be at that college. In addition, so these are your estimates. In addition, you should also run what's called the net price calculator on every college's website. There's always a caveat. There is no, again, the government has made colleges have a net price calculator on their website, but they don't have to, it doesn't have to be accurate. It's horrible to say that, but there's no accuracy related to the net price calculator. Some colleges truly have great net price calculators and some don't. So I would run it. I would compare it against your estimate. I would save your information that you run in the net price calculator. I would save what the output is of the net price calculator. And one kind of way maybe to get us, and if the net price calculator is kind of similar to your estimation, then maybe their net price calculator, is pretty good. If sometimes they say what tuition numbers that they're using, hopefully they're using up-to-date tuition numbers. If they ask like more detailed questions, then it tends to be a more accurate estimate. I honestly, it's another question that you maybe as a parent, but also your student can ask the admissions office, is kind of, when was the last time that price calculator was updated? That's fair to ask, because you want to, have a sense of how much you can or maybe you shouldn't rely on it. Okay, let me quickly jump over here. The second example is a family that has done their estimation, and they know off the bat that they have a very high SAI. In fact, their SAI is going to be higher than the cost of attendance at most colleges. So they're never going to be a family that is going to be eligible for need-based aid, because they don't have like any financial need as far as the college is determining it. So in this case, this family is only, again, I keep repeating, it's only going to be able to reduce their cost of college if they go to a college where the college offers merit scholarships. So again, that's why it's important to know what your SAI is and then know what the cost of attendance is. I got to tell you, at some schools, I mean, not this family with the 90,000, but let's say a family that might have 70,000 as an SAI. At some schools, that family with a 70,000 SAI might have financial need, because if their SAI is less than the cost of attendance, they have financial need. And at other schools, they might not have financial aid because the cost of attendance is less than their SAI. So that's why it's important to know what your SAI is and the cost of attendance and kind of where you fall relative to potentially having need or potentially needing to look for colleges with merit scholarships. Okay. Let me just, and then the part about knowing your budget is, okay, I kind of gave you a very, very, very quick explanation of how this process works, but on some level, that all doesn't really matter because you just might not even have enough in savings to cover what they think your SAI is, or there might be other reasons why you've got other expenses that the government isn't recognizing. Or I'll tell you a third factor is, and this is actually happens a lot, is that maybe you know off the bat, and maybe your student knows that they want to go on for even more studies after undergraduate. Maybe they want to go to medical school. Maybe they want to go to law school. Maybe they want to go to dental school. And so they already, you know that there's going to be other educational costs besides undergraduate, and you're trying to use your budget to stretch as far as possible. That's why, again, it's important to know what your family is willing to pay for college. And I'll give you the very quick example or story of a family that we worked with, where the family was actually, upper middle class. They had good savings for college, but there were two issues happening. One is the student knew that they wanted to go to onto medical school. That's great. So the father was trying to use the money that he had saved to go as stretch as far as possible. But then in addition, they had a sibling with a major disability that they knew that they were going to have to support for a very long time. So, these are things that don't show up on, your financial aid form. So that's why only your family can know this. And so on paper, the family looked like they could afford a very expensive college. And they could if they didn't have these other issues. And maybe the student only wanted to go to undergraduate and didn't want to go on to medical school. But because they knew these other things, the father said, I want to find a college where it's only going to cost, not only, but where it's going to cost me $50,000 because I want to use the money to help, in medical school. So, and they worked hard. She applied to a lot of schools. She was also a very good student. The better your student's test score and GPA is, it just opens up the opportunities for more colleges being willing to offer merit scholarships. The bottom line is, because they understood this earlier on in the process, because he understood what his budget was, because the student worked hard and had good stats, they played the game, they played the system. And they had a range of opportunities of where their student could go, from elite and selective schools where she wasn't going to get any support to, schools that, may not be in the top 10, but were very, very good reputable schools. And ultimately, and some schools where she got automatic merit scholarships, some schools where she had to do applications. Ultimately, she got a lot of money where it covered the majority of her costs, but it was because they did the work and they also knew their situation going into the process. Okay, I know I don't have that much time. I'm going to skip to just show you our tool to how you can make this process a little easier to research. I have to stop sharing and share a different screen. Okay, share. Okay, can people thumbs up? Am I sharing? It should say thank you. So I've been in this space, honestly, for 10 years. It was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago that we decided to build a tool to help families do this process. Honestly, I have people on my team who work one-on-one with families. My goal really is much more to educate parents that you can be a better guide in this process and you can do the research because A, you can, and B, the data is available. I think in the past, there just weren't companies providing the tools to the families because they only wanted to provide it to maybe the counselors or the private counselors, but I am here I'd like to help what I call the DIY family. The families are going to try and do as much as they can on their own because, it's a complicated process. The process costs money. You might as well try and reduce your costs as much as possible. And I also think the smarter you become about the process, the better decisions you help your student with. And anyhow, I personally think you'll get a better outcome. Okay, so here's a tool we created called Insights. And what we did is we compiled the data that I've been talking about that just makes it easier for you guys to do the research. So let me sign in. So if you go to insights.road2college.com, you can see it. You can create a free account. And you do have some free searches that you can do. It is a paid tool. It's basically $25 a month, and then there are different options. And you can use it for a month, you can use it for 2 months, or you can get an annual plan. So it's very, very, very flexible about how much you want to use it and for how long. So let me sign in and show you quickly what it is. And I will tell you that in April, we're also coming out with a newer version of it. So I'm going to go to Power Search because that's, I think, the most valuable and interesting. So here's where you can search. We have data on mostly every 4-year college. Actually, every 4-year college. There might be some 2-year colleges in here, but most people are focusing on the 4-year college. You can search individually by a college. You can search by major. All the different majors that are in here. You can start typing, business, and it brings them up. You can search by region. These are regions that the government has created that they use for their data purposes. And also you can search by individual states. And then on the left, we have kind of more detailed filters. And I will say there are definitely other college websites out there. I think what's different about what we've done is we've really focused on the financial side of searching for colleges, not just the there are different websites that you can search by how the students rate the food or that type of stuff. Where this is very much a financial search. So you can search purely by the cost of attendance for out-of-state, in-state, private. We have unknown because unfortunately some colleges don't share the cost of attendance data. You can search by average merit award. So show me all the schools that are offering an average merit of 20,000 or more. You can search that way. You can search. We actually have done the math by net cost. So we've done, if a college offers merit scholarship and they share what their average merit award is, we've done the math. So show me a college where the net cost is in the range of 30,000 to 60,000. So that's all like cost numbers. And then here's this percent net need number, percent need met, number that I mentioned. So this is if you know that you might be eligible for need, you're going to want to find a school, right, that offers probably honestly as much need as possible, from 90% to 100%. So you can search and find those schools. Of course, size, you can search by deadline. But if you want to do what I call a reverse type search, then test scores are an important number to use. And I know that's kind of an antithesis to the world of test optional, but from a searching and a data standpoint, college data still uses test scores because it's the most reliable and because it's the most easily compiled. So it actually always bothered me for a long time that colleges didn't share or there wasn't as much data on GPA. And even if you look at what's on the screen here, a lot of these colleges have a dash for GPA and what average GPA. And what that means is they didn't share that data. So if they don't share it, nobody has it. And I kind of wondered why didn't they? And I actually spoke to a dean of admissions a few months ago, and they had the best explanation for me, which makes sense, is that, and it kind of goes back to the conversation we had earlier, that high schools calculate their GPAs in lots of different ways. Colleges, recalculate their students' GPA. And a college, when it comes time for the data gathering, just doesn't have the resources to recalculate everybody's GPA so that it's standardized across the board. And they would need to do that for all the applications that they get to actually share this information, because this information is, when it's shared from a data perspective, it's standardized, it's put in across all of the students who apply, and they just don't put their resources there. So that's why colleges don't always have that information publicly to share. But SATs or ACTs are just so easy because whatever the student submits has already been standardized. So that's why there is more of that data out there. So one other caveat, let me just say, again, a lot of students may not be submitting their test scores, and I get it, and that is still valid. It would be nice that at least they had a test score that you could use for searching purposes. If your student either hasn't taken the test yet, because maybe they're in 9th grade, or they're just not going to take a test, you can use their GPA and at least estimate what range that they would be. So you can Google, actually Prep Scholar, which is a website, has very good conversion charts, and you can look it up and say, okay, my student has a 3.8 GPA. What is likely? How would they have performed? And then create a range. Maybe, again, making it up, maybe that 3.8 student would have gotten between a 1300 to a 1400. So that's the range that you could use for an SAT for searching purposes. Okay. So that's just an explanation of why we kind of still rely heavily on test scores to do for research. So if I'm using the test score, right, I'm going to put in that 1300 to 1400 as the range. Oops, sorry. This one didn't catch. Okay. So now, if I want to find colleges with this 1300 to 1400 is in what I call that top 75th percentile range, right? Because that's where my student's going to be at the top of the academic range for that college. I'm going to pick this option here, and it's going to automatically filter and show me the colleges where that SAT range puts them in the 75th percentile. I could also look at average, and what all that is telling me is that my student has a good likelihood of being accepted to that college, but they may not have as strong of a likelihood of getting merit scholarships, because if that college is focusing on giving merit scholarships to the top students, then I'd want to look at where my students' test scores kind of put them at the top. So now we've automatically filtered the colleges down to 197 colleges where they have that test score and it puts them at the top. But not every one of these 197 colleges offers merit. So now we have to sort and say, okay, of these colleges, let me sort in order of average merit aid. Okay, so now I've kind of quickly zoned in, and I can find the colleges where that test score range puts them in the top 75th percentile. And now these colleges are the colleges that offer merit. And now I can go through and save these colleges. I can make a ton of lists. And once you save a college, you can see it in a chart form, or table form, which I'll show you, which you might allow you to do even more calculations or sorting. So this is one way of using the data. So let me go to my lists. This is lists that I've created. You can name them whatever you want. Okay, so this happens to be, actually, let me scroll down. Oh, okay. I made a list of schools that are offering early decision. And so once you create a list, you can now see it in this table or chart form. And you can look at pieces of the information. I add all the information that we have here together, but that might be overwhelming for some people. And now you can, it's kind of like a version of Excel. You can scroll through and see all the data. And so we have just helped you collect all the data that you would have on your own had to go to individual colleges' websites and common data set to get the data. So that's one benefit of what we've done in this tool. Somebody asking, can you download it to Excel? You can download a limited part of this data. So I think we allow you can, I think you have 2 or 3 downloads in the paid version, and you can download like 20 schools and 30 columns, something like that. We just don't allow you to download it all because, people could and would download it all. So, but anyhow, I think from what we allow you to download, you could do a lot, if you wanted to in your own Excel spreadsheet. But let me show you some important pieces of data that we do. This is honestly, and so besides kind of compiling the data for you, we also do the math for you. Again, this is math you could do, but we're just making it easier and doing it for you. So, and the math, there's different sections that we do the math, but I'm just going to focus on the admit rates. So here is, actually, let me sort this, and you can sort these columns. Let's change. Okay. So here is different, you can see different admit rates. So the overall admit rate is a compilation of a school that their regular decision admits, their early decision, their early action. It's all compiled into one number. But what happens is if colleges have early decision, then sometimes the admit rate at the early decision stage is very different than the admit rate at the regular decision stage and the overall number. So, and again, what's showing here are just the elite schools, but it applies across the board. It's any school that has an early decision. So let's just look at Brown. So Brown's admit rate was 5%. That's overall. But if you break out and just look at Brown's early decision rate, it's 13%. So obviously you can see, and both difficult to get into, but there's a little bit better advantage if you're applying early decision. The other important number to look at is what percent of the class does that school fill early decision? So just sticking with Brown, Brown's fills over 50% of the class through their early decision process. If you even like, scan down here, where, John Hopkins is filling 61% of the class, early decision. That is not to put pressure and not force kids to apply early decision, but it's just, again, to know the process that's going on. If your student is interested in one of these schools, and there are other schools that offer early decision that aren't, as tough to get into, you might want to know that they should be, whether or not there's more of an advantage in applying early, or how many spots are going to be available if they apply regular decision. A pretty well-known school that I always jump to, let me see if it's here, is Tulane. Actually, here, it might show up this way if I sort it. Yeah. Let's see. Here it is, Tulane. Okay, so Tulane, 15% overall admit rate. Their early decision rate is 68%. I'm not putting a judgment on this because, that's another conversation, but this is just the way that they're handling the process. Tulane's really encouraging students to apply early decision. They are accepting at a much higher rate, and they are filling the majority of their class early decision. So what that means is if you're applying regular decision, it just becomes harder. Again, I'm not making a judgment on whether this is, right for the colleges to do or not. At this point, they can do this. This is their process. But as a consumer, you need to understand what they're doing because it's going to impact, potentially when your student applies, and just the expectations that, you have and they have about how hard the different rounds of applications are going to be. So I know it's about 10 minutes over. And so let me just look if there's any quick questions. We could probably go on for another hour, but I can't right now. So Somebody's saying, is that because early decision helps their yield number? 100%. Susie's asking. Yes, very astute. Yes. So yield, which is another number here, admit yield, really means like how many students did we offer to come and how many accepted our offer. So the higher the yield, that means that this, more the likelihood of a student of a college sending out the application is a very high likelihood of that student accepting. And yes, to manipulate that number, Susan's absolutely right. Obviously, students who get apply early decision, they don't really have a choice. They made that choice before they decided to apply. But if they apply early decision and got accepted, in the case of Tulane, 68% of them are being accepted, and they're accepting 65% of the class. That definitely increases the school's admit or their yield. So it's a somewhat manipulating of the numbers, but if you know what numbers go into all of these, then you would have a better understanding of how accurate that yield number is. Okay. Somebody's asking, the April version will have new common data set values. That's a good question. Sorry, just had to take a sip. I'll give you just a 5-minute explanation about the timing of the common data set and when you can expect to get to see that information. So common data set is the numbers around it, like right now here. Actually, let's do this. Let's pull up, we're going to do Tulane common data set just to make this real. Okay, so they have what is called the 2024-2025 common data set. That's actually the most recent common data set. And let me explain what the numbers represent. So 2024, so the common data set is based on information from the students who just enrolled in this past fall. So students enrolled in the fall of 2025, that's why that's the first number. And then 2024, students enrolled in 2024. And then they're there for the academic year 25. So that's what this represents. So this is data for students who enrolled in the fall of 2024, and they're going to be there through the academic year 2025. This is the most recent data that's available. Not every college has that available yet, because just think about the logistics. They can't start collecting this information until the students enroll, right? So the students enroll in the fall of 2024. A lot of other things happening. There's actually an office called the Office of Institutional Research that's usually responsible for this number, and they have to send their surveys out to all the departments. So it takes them a few months to kind of get their information together. So honestly, I've rarely seen a common data set earlier than like January or February. And those are colleges that are really on top of it. A lot of colleges are still compiling the information. So Tulane is out there, that's great. But most colleges don't have all of their information together until now. And then they have to then share it. They share it publicly, and then they share it to 3 organizations. One is called the College Board, which is the maker of the SAT. They help compile the information. The other is U.S. News and World Report. They are a major organization that gets this information. And the third is a private company called Peterson's, who then licenses the data out. That's where we get our data from. We get it from Peterson's. And those are the only 3 sources where you can get the common data set in bulk. If you want to go individually to every college's website and pull it up publicly, yes, you can get it. But, to make it scalable, you have to license it. And so we license it from Peterson's, and Peterson's then has to get the data from all of the companies, all the colleges. They usually don't put out a new complete data set, which goes across all the colleges till about July. So any website that has searching capability doesn't usually get their new common data set information until July or August. So that's when the new that's when we'll get it too. Obviously, we all want to have kind of as new information as possible, but I will say, looking and comparing data from year to year, there's not huge changes. If you looked at 10 years to today, you would see trends, but year to year, there's not going to be like a big jump in admit rate or in the average merit that a college is giving. I am not saying that. I'm just saying that to say I wouldn't hold off researching until the most up-to-date common data set is available. I would still start researching now, and then obviously confirm everything when new data is available. But it wouldn't hold me back from start doing the researching now. Okay, so I will just I'll see. I mean, if you guys want to see, this is the new version. I think. Oh, hold on. I'll share. I can share what it looks like, but I might run into a bug or two. But if you want to see some new stuff that we have, so this is just a new landing page. And I gotta find the right, I think, let's see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is our new version of Insights. We give you a dashboard now to kind of just get a bigger picture of the whole process. We also summarize for you some steps that you should be taking, depending on what class that your student's graduating. So these link to articles or worksheets. We've kind of separated this out to say, okay, there's obviously you're searching for lists. That's what this section is. At some point, your student's going to have applications that they're going to want to just track, or they're applying for applications. They want to track what schools that they're applying to. So we separated that out. And then finally, your student's going to have offers, and they're going to share their offers. And actually, that's something I didn't show you in Insights, that you can see other people's offers, but I'll show you here. And then you get access to the library of different videos that we do. If you want one-on-one services, you can see what they are. And then these are deals that we have with different partners. Okay. So discover. So this is that table. And then we actually, we give you more capabilities to filter. So you can filter by cost of attendance. You can filter, on, the difference here is you can filter on any column that we have. We give you some default filters, but you see at the end, you can add any filter that you want. So we just are making it more intensive for searching purposes. So I can sort here and show me all the schools that have an early decision deadline, and show me all the schools that offer 8 merit that's greater than 15,000. And then let's see. I hope that this works. This is still in testing, so then we can apply. Oh, sorry. Okay, that's why it's not out yet. But we are close, and it will be out in April. But so hopefully then it would filter the responses, and you'd have a smaller set of colleges there. You can also view this on thumbnail, and then you can select any of these colleges, and you can make lists. So it's very similar, but it's more intensive searching and filtering capabilities. The other thing I will say that we have that's new, okay. Let me get rid of these filters, is we do have a few more pieces of data that we were able to pull in. Okay, let me let's go to Tulane. So we have, a lot of the same information. Oh, we're going to have a section, this is testing, where you can add notes. You can decide to make your notes public, or you can keep them private for yourself. So you might be able to see what other people are saying. So we have this section, this isn't filled in yet, called academic factors and non-academic factors. So colleges share on the common data set. They tell you what factors are important to them when they're looking at an application. So this information isn't filled in here yet, but we would show you which of the very important academic factors that Tulane is considering, which are the which are the non-academic factors, and why this is important is particularly for a school that considers demonstrated interest important. You want to know that, because if a school is saying it's important for us to know that your student is showing interest, then you want to make sure that your student, is showing the school demonstrated interest in some shape or form. So anyhow, so we pulled in that information. We also pulled in, this is new information too, is what percentage of the students who were accepted actually submitted their SAT or ACT score. So that could help you kind of, figure out a little bit better, even though the school is test optional, how many students are really, who ended up enrolling really submitted their test scores, because that gives you an indication of, if even though the school is test optional, if the majority of students are submitting the test scores, is your student going to be at a disadvantage if they truly apply test option? So that's just a quick view. So I apologize again for the errors, but we're working on it, and that should be out pretty soon. Oh, one other quick thing. Sorry, let me show you that I didn't, which is available in the other, in the version that we have out right now, is we have a section called crowdsourced offers. So a service that we offer to, it's a free to existing seniors, is that if you share your college offer with us, then you can see other people's offers that are going to the same school. So when your student gets their offer, you have no idea, did other families get the same dollar amount, or did they get more, did they get less? So that's the value when you're a senior of sharing your offer. When you are earlier in the process, you can see these offers as part of the college information. So this is just dummy data, but this would, we go back basically to 2020. We've been collecting offers, and you can see what students actually got at those colleges. So, it's the data that they're telling us from the common data set, and then it's the data that the families are actually sharing with us to say, my student actually got this dollar amount, they applied early decision, they submitted their test scores, and this is what they got. So that's actually really valuable data that a lot of people like to use as part of their searching and as part of our tool. Okay, thank you, everyone. I went on pretty long, but hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this gave you just a really good jump start. I will go through some of the questions that I might not have had a chance to look at, but don't be afraid. Just get started and research. The better you research, the better your outcome will be. It's just, I think that, I've seen it over and over. And the earlier, not to drive you crazy, not that you have to start in, in ninth grade, but 100% if you're a family with a junior, you should have started, you should be starting. If you have a family with a sophomore, it's great to start, because next year, this time, this will be old hat for you. You can now be feel more confident in your students' choices, and you could be focusing on the next phase of the process, which is essays, and it just makes the whole process a lot smoother and less anxiety oriented. And unfortunately, there's going to be changes that we don't know that are coming down the pike, but if you're a little bit ahead of the game, then you can weather the bumps better. Okay, thank you, everyone. Great to see you. Feel free to send questions. Thank you for the people who put themselves on video, and I hope to see you again soon.